Hello, everybody. I am Ines, and you are watching the Millennial Talk 2.0 multilingual intergenerational conversations. And today is exactly that. We're going to have a bilingual conversation with our two guests. One guest will be in English, but he does understand Spanish, and our other guest will be in Espanol. And I am excited because today's episode is called Our Bilingual Issues, because both of our guests are actually hosts on the WCEG Network, and you should definitely check out their shows. We're going to talk about those before we get into our interview. But first, I do want to remind you that the views of this show do not reflect the views of the network. And also, we are streaming on 12 platforms for our podcast and radio shows. And definitely add us to your Roku channel so that you don't miss any of our amazing shows on the network. So, like I said, my name is Senora Enesse, and we are about to get started. So, first of all, I want to thank you both for being here today. Bienvenidos al programa hoy. ¿Cómo están? How are you guys?
Muy bien, if I can speak in Spanish for a little bit, and hope you are also. Glad to be here.
Doing wonderful. Y usted?
Me too. Thank you for having me today. I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yes, this is my first time doing it with two guests in two different languages in the same episode. So this is going to be a learning curve, but it's going to be exciting as well because, first of all, you two are comfortable on the air. So that makes it a lot more fun. And with you being in the WCEG family and this season that we're going into being a more family oriented season, this is my favorite part of the year. The holiday season is here. Thanksgiving is this coming week, but going into the holidays, more people spend more time with their families. Even when you go out into the stores and everything, people are generally a little bit nicer, except on Black Friday. But people are generally nicer and kinder. And I love this part of the year because people are nicer generally, instead of, how when people are annoyed and hot in the summer. So our first guest is Mr. Norman Carter Jr. He is the host of Issues and Answers on the WCEG Network. Mr. Carter, would you like to tell us anything specific about you that we need to know before we dive in?
Other than the fact that I'm happy, nah, no, really. I'll be very quick. It's ironic that I'm on your show, the Millennial Talk Show, because my first interview on WCEG before I became a broadcaster was on the Millennial Talk program with Mr. Javon Brown. That was 2016, something
Wow.
like
So
that. So,
it's been a few
uh,
years, but
yes, it
you're still
has
here.
been.
And now you have your own show. So that's exciting how one interview can change your life, like how being in the room one time can change your
Yeah,
life when you meet the right people. Y
absolutely.
Ramona, you have Our Bilingual Place, and would you like to tell us more about you and your show?
Yes, thank you for inviting me. And good to see Mr. Norman together, discussing what we do and why we do. So our bilingual place started, if I don't mistake, around 2017. I visited the show on 2016, and then I have the proposal. And it was amazing since then, be able to teach my language, be able to encourage people, be able to open conversation about topics that not many people wants to talk about, but it's necessary to talk, at least put on the table the situations, because we all live the same thing in some part of our lives. So letting the audience know that they are not alone and there is more people, experiencing things, it is good for many people. And I have been experiencing myself. So listen others talking about what you are living, encourage more to say, I can be able to make it. I'm gonna look the way. And encouraging people and bring guests that have been very success through language. becoming, bilinguals, or at least in the way trying to become bilingual is very important. I think, it's very important.
So recently you had a guest on your show for she was Afro-Latina, and I thought that that was an amazing guest to have because a lot of my Afro-Latino and Afro-Latina friends do not have enough people who know that they exist. And that's what is crazy to me because of the history of the Americas, to not know that there are people who look like me in the Spanish-speaking countries in this side of the world is wild because the media doesn't show us. The media hides us in those different cultures. And I don't know the reasoning behind it, but we could take a guess. But my first time seeing some Afro Latinos was in about actually 11 years ago. I just got a Facebook reminder. It was 11 years ago, the first time I went to Puerto Rico, and I wanted to go to school there. So I wanted to go and take a trip there beforehand and get to see the area where I would be going to school and all of that. Ended up not going to college there because of the financial aid. But while I was there, the first time I got there, I thought everyone looked like J-Lo, like Jennifer Lopez. I thought that's what the whole island was going to look like. And when I saw someone who looked like me at the bus stop, she's not even famous, but I was like, can you take a picture with me? I had no idea. They don't show us you. And just having access to the world made a difference in my perspective because it made me feel less small. A lot of times people who live here in the States look like us, they end up feeling small because we're called minorities all the time and we're treated like second-class citizens. Whereas when we go into the rest of the world, it's people who look like us all over the place. Yes, we might be the only one in like certain areas, but then again, it allows us to make our own imprint. And I love traveling. And Mr. Norman, I'm assuming part of your love for Spanish is because you like to travel. Is that true?
Well, part of it. I actually, this is a small story. Uh, I began speaking Spanish at the age of 12. I was in a special class at experimental class. But one of the things that we did, in addition to speaking Spanish, was to go into the neighborhood that was predominantly Puerto Ricanos, and we assisted them in giving them information on social programs because a lot of these people had newly immigrated into the United States. So it was giving them information about health, social services, and we did a little bit of conversing. Then my first paper route was also in that neighborhood. But it was a mixed neighborhood. I had Spanish speaking, Russian, Polish. It was just a great big melting pot. And I have always, I get that was the beginning of my embracing the Latin American culture and appreciation of the fact that we're all in this together. And the one thing that separates us often is language. And if by learning another language, uh, I think it helps to bridge that gap. I don't mean that we all need to be exceptional linguists, but just to have an understanding of the language, the culture of other people makes you see that we're all red on the inside, you know?
Exactly. One thing I like to say is I love, okay, so I have four languages currently. I'm working on more, but my four main languages, of course, are English, Spanish, American Sign Language, and French. And I believe that the American Sign Language for the deaf Americans here, I believe that that language and Spanish are two of the most essential, especially for Black people to learn in this country. Because imagine if we could break those language barriers that you're talking about using sign language. If we use sign language, we give access to the deaf people in this country to everything. and giving them access, it levels the playing field. So then that creates more jobs, and then being able to let deaf people work in customer service positions is going to be something different, because a lot of them are very social and they would be great at it. How many times have you gone to somewhere and the service was awful? Giving that job to someone who wants the job and who's qualified, other than people are scared that someone won't understand them, that I feel like if we break that language barrier by teaching sign language, like real American Sign Language, not just signs, I think that that will make a huge difference. But on top of that, learning Spanish, I believe that the deaf individuals and the Spanish speaking communities understand what it's like more than any other group to be Black in America. And I believe that if we could bridge those three groups together, we wouldn't need someone to come save us. We would be able to be self-sufficient. And I think that's why they focus, the powers that be, that's why they focus on separating us so much, so that we don't get the opportunity to build those relationships that are intercultural or multicultural. And that's why I love having this show, because it allows me to show that we can learn Spanish. Like I told you about the first time I seen someone in Puerto Rico, but like Celia Cruz, if I started learning Spanish around
Ah,
12 years old too.
yes,
So
my
if
favorite.
Celia Cruz was never introduced to me by my Spanish teacher, I don't even know if I would still be speaking Spanish. But
Uh,
seeing her at such a young age, she looks like me, and she is not speaking English. She said my English is not very good looking. And that was the most funny thing I've ever heard, because it was like my Spanish wasn't good looking either. So it was like I
yeah,
saw myself in someone who didn't necessarily speak my language, but wasn't necessarily from Africa, because yes, we know about the African languages. So I think that it's an amazing thing for us to be able to break these language barriers like you're talking about. Okay, so I do want you to tell me, Mr. Norman, can you tell me a little bit more about your life growing up? And you said you had the paper route, and
yeah.
you started Spanish at around 12 years old.
Well,
You had that community that you worked in.
yeah, and I actually grew up in what is considered a poor neighborhood. Uh, but we had universally, we had parents that wanted us all to do better and encouraged us all to get an education. And my life path didn't quite go the way that I wanted it. After I graduated, I was the second person in my family to graduate from high school. My mother was the first, and her story is so interesting because she had to stop school after high school. She wanted to go to college. She wanted to be a teacher. After her children were grown, she went back to college and she became a teacher at
Wow.
like 52 years old, and she taught until she was 72, and she died shortly after that. But
Wow, that's
I went, yeah, I went into the military for three years, got a lot out of the military, and I came back. I embarked on a career in policing, and I was very idealistic. Growing up in my neighborhood, I saw a lot of corruption, a lot of police corruption, a lot of police brutality, and this was in the what we call the tumultuous '60s. So there was a lot of actual what we have now, a lot of hatred of police officers and a need to change. And I was about that. I was mentored by some fairly militant individuals, but I figured the best way to change or help change the system is to be in the system and work in the system. And that's what I did. It caused me a lot of problems because I was very outspoken. Certain things I wouldn't tolerate. That's why I wrote my book. Uh, I exposed corrupt police behavior and took a lot of punishment during and after my career, and which is strange because the harassment that I experienced after I retired was so intense that I had to leave Philadelphia and I moved to Georgia and had no job, no prospects or anything. But but uh, things changed uh, rapidly, and I blame that all on the good Lord. Uh, that seems redundant to say good Lord, but anyway, uh, uh, my career changed. Opportunities presented to me. I eventually became involved in management in the hotel industry, and I actually retired from that about 7 years ago. So, and then I wrote a book, about my career. And the reason I wrote my book was about uh, empowering young police officers to hold on to their ideals and values, and also to empower the community to be more participatory in their police departments and their governments, and that they have the power to change things if you stay engaged. And that's the essence of my book, and that's the essence of my life right now.
And what is the title of your book?
It's entitled The Long Blue Walk, My Journey as a Philly Cop. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the major book outlets.
Wow, I'm sad that you went through all of that, but I'm happy you were able to take it and make it into a book so that you can teach the next generation, because we might not have ever met William Shakespeare, but we know his works.
Right.
And our works out that are concrete outlive us. So our works now, it might not be a physical book, it might be that ebook, it might be an online course, but our works outlive us and people remember how we treat them. So I'm glad that you stood up for the people in your community, because there's a lot of people who see, especially in different industries, when they see corruption happening, and they might not be corrupt themselves, but they might just let it pass. And that's just like being a bystander when you see someone being bullied, is not making a difference. So I like that you had the courage. And I know that took a lot of strength. You said you took you had issues, consequences after leaving Philadelphia. And by the way, I am a Philly fan all the way. I'm a big Eagles fan. So
Okay.
it's really cool that you said you're from Philadelphia. We're going to have a conversation about that later. But
Okay.
for you to come from up in Philadelphia to move to the South, how was the transition? Was it more of the same kind of people, or was it a little bit different?
Well, I was fortunate that my son and my daughter had moved here at separate times years ago before, and my daughter had been trying to get me to move here for years. It's when my son chimed in. I said, "Okay, it's time to go." But the things had become so bad there that I was a hermit. My last 2 years, I was afraid to go out of the house. Actually, um, it was that bad. But my first interview about my book was right here on WCEG. And that led to my being uh, having presentations at several universities, and I was supposed to do one next week, but they had a little glitch, that's going to change until later. But so WCEG has been has been intricate in helping me to promote my book, and also has helped me to be propelled into the position I am now, which is I sit on City Council in Snellville, Georgia. I do want to extend some gratitude to Ramona for that, because I think her interview reached a lot of people that helped me get the few votes that I needed to get over the top. So that's my new career now. But the book and my presentations on WCEG all work together to lead me to the point where I am now in my life.
Okay, and now we're going to switch to Spanish, porque tengo preguntas para ti también. ¿Me puedes contar un poco sobre tu vida al crecer?
¿A mí?
Sí.
Oh, ok. So yo nací en León, Guanajuato, México. I, you know, mm, we were, I have five.
En español.
Ese es el problema de a veces tener mucho tiempo para hablar inglés.
Sí.
Nací en León, Guanajuato, México. Tengo tres hermanos y dos hermanas. Yo soy la mayor. Am, n- Tú sabes, la vida es dura en nuestros países. Yo allí fui a la escuela. Mis papás eran, nos enseñaban mucho que la educación era primero, a tener un fundamento para poder tener un buen trabajo cuando creces. Desafortunadamente, no hay mucho oportunidad en nuestros países, como en todos lados. No puedo decir que aquí tampoco a veces hay personas que se les dificulta. Bueno, creciendo, me gradué, conseguí varios trabajos. Después de tiempo, finales de 1997, conocí a mi esposo. Esa fue la razón por la que yo vine a los Estados Unidos, porque, digamos, me casé, vine a vivir aquí a los Estados Unidos. Pero desde siempre me he considerado ser una persona que si veo una oportunidad, la aprovecho. Creo que viviendo las situaciones, tú sabes, difíciles en nuestro país, de pobreza, de falta de oportunidades, de querer salir adelante y no encontrar el modo, ah, siempre te hace mirar tu sentido de querer hacer algo, querer salir adelante. Me hizo una persona donde yo podía mirar oportunidades en cualquier lado, aunque fueran pequeñas o aunque fueran solo para aprender o conocer personas. Finales de 1997 conocí a mi esposo. Él ya vivía en los Estados Unidos. Y él me propuso venir para acá a los Estados Unidos. Yo no tenía papeles, entonces la manera con la que vine a los Estados Unidos fue cruzando el río. Como muchas de los migrantes que venimos para acá. Y en enero llegué aquí alrededor. Yo no soy muy buena en fechas, pero llegué alrededor, creo que fue el 6 o 7 de enero a los Estados Unidos y así empezó mi vida. Ah, un cambio muy drástico, muy diferente, pero gracias a Dios fue bueno personalmente, fue muy bueno. Am, Gracias a Dios, en marzo nos casamos. En abril del 98 tuve mi primera hija, y así fue como empecé a construir mi vida en matrimonio. Ah, Tuve 12 años creciendo a mis hijos en casa, gracias a Dios tuve esa oportunidad, am, estar con ellos, enseñarles, hablarles. am, Fue muy bueno, gracias a Dios. Después de 12 años, gracias a Dios tuve mis documentos, pude ir a trabajar. Mi primer trabajo fue en una bodega empacando am, productos médicos. Y allí tengo que agradecer mucho también a una cuñada mía, a Juanis. Le agradezco mucho porque ella me ayudó a entrar allí. Y fue mi primer trabajo en los Estados, bueno, digamos, mi primer trabajo formal en los Estados Unidos. De ese trabajo allí en el 2010, si no me recuerdo, la bodega cerró el departamento donde yo trabajaba.
Mm.
Y yo me sentí muy mal porque era un trabajo muy bueno, ya me había acomodado, me gustaba trabajar allí. Pero, ¿sabes? Siempre cuando miras que algo malo pasa o que algo que no te gusta pasa, es porque viene un cambio. Y para mí, que cerraran ese departamento fue un cambio muy grande en mi vida personal y profesional, porque pude hacerme ciudadana gracias a los empujones que mi esposo me dio. Después de eso, tuve oportunidad de ir a hacer el GED. Terminando mi GED, que gracias a Dios no reprobé ninguno de los exámenes. Tuve oportunidad de ir al colegio. Empezar en el colegio fue otra, digamos, aventura que me trajo muchas oportunidades. Yo ni siquiera hablaba bien el español, el inglés, ni siquiera hablaba bien el inglés. Yo todavía usaba mucho el diccionario para poder comunicarme. Y en mi primer año de colegio fue el 2015. Fue como yo empecé a dar clases en la librería. Y esa fue otra puerta que se abrió gracias a que empezaba a reafirmar más mi lenguaje, pero también a las ganas de hacer algo diferente, también de las ganas de ayudar a las personas a dar oportunidad de aprender un segundo lenguaje, porque yo siempre he dicho y siempre he dicho en mis clases a cualquier persona que viene, tú vas a aprender un lenguaje y ese lenguaje te va a traer oportunidades de trabajo, oportunidades de vida, oportunidades que nunca te puedes imaginar que hubieras podido tener al aprender un segundo lenguaje. Entonces, esa para mí es algo gratificante y algo grande que yo puedo dar a la comunidad, a cada persona que viene a mi clase o a cada persona que, tú sabes, quiere trabajar en el lenguaje para crecer profesionalmente, pero también personalmente. Y en el 2015 empecé a dar mis clases. En el 2016 conocí a otra gran amiga, Pauline Mansfield, que le mando saludos y muchas gracias. Ella ha sido mi mentor, ha sido mi amiga. Ella fue la persona que me abrió otra puerta, otra idea en mi cabeza loca de empezar a escribir, escribir un libro. Yo la
Ah.
conocí a ella en una reunión de Toastmasters, mm, y ella me animó mucho a empezar a escribir. Escribí mi primer libro en el 2016. Se llama The Bilingual Guide to Become Bilingual, The Beginner's Guide to Become Bilingual. En el 2000, ay, creo que es en el 2018, escribí mi segundo libro, The Bilingual Intermediate Guide to Become Bilingual. You can find it on Amazon. And is, in my opinion, because I have been reviewing several materials, I think it's unconventional because I'm not a teacher, graduated, with certificate. My classes are self-designed, and I love to teach the way we learn when we grow. I don't have a structure. I just, offer myself to teach wherever everyone want to learn. I think in my opinion, is the best way. There is not technicities. Um, and I'm agree that I need a structure, but I feel I don't have a structure, no in my life, no in my professional life. And sometimes many people accommodate to that way, others not. But it's what I have been doing, teaching, serving in the community. My main job is legal administrative assistance. So that is another way to serve the community with my language and also with my knowledge on legal. Especially
Find placement like for where you are. A lot of times when there are Spanish speakers that are they're in need of legal assistance, and having someone who speaks their language, it makes them very comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. So just having that little piece of it, at least I might understand what's going on. But it might be something bad, but at least I understand what's going on. I'm happier and where you are, because we need more people like you in those areas. So you're opening up the door for many more to come behind you and make a huge difference, especially both of you in the legal and judicial system work that you've done and are doing.
Gracias. Y creo que mi cabeza se fue en inglés.
Está bien, está
Pero
bien.
estoy segura que mucha gente allá en nuestra audiencia entiende un poco de inglés, si han entendido. Por eso animo tanto a nuestra audiencia que habla inglés o que habla español o francés o árabe, aprender otro lenguaje, porque abre puertas, abre oportunidades, cambia mentes. Hablar un lenguaje cambia mentes. Y creo que ahorita más que en otro tiempo, necesitamos hacer un cambio de mente en todo,
Sí.
especialmente en nuestros niños, en nuestros jóvenes, que están muy vulnerables, como dice Mr. Norman, de mucha mala información. No hay suficientes recursos para aclarar información, para dar buena recursos en comunidades que, como tú también dices, están aisladas o que no dan oportunidad a que salgan.
Y ahora tenemos más oportunidades a tener los recursos que necesitamos porque tenemos el Internet y tenemos YouTube y las experiencias, las cuentas de, no, los cuentos de la otra gente que ya tienen la experiencia, las experiencias diferentes de negocios o de la escuela o todo lo que necesitamos aprender. Si ya no sabemos, podemos aprender en este momento más que antes. Y estoy feliz porque tenemos todo lo que necesitamos, pero es difícil porque no tenemos por lo grande, no tenemos la mentalidad como la gente mía y la gente tuya, necesitamos cambiarla, como ya has dicho. Pues vamos a cambiar a inglés. Tengo
Y,
otra pregunta para el señor. So,
un momento, por
sí, sí,
favor.
sí, sí.
Porque yo escucho a muchos programas de Senora Hernández y siempre ella trata levantar la gente con información que es importante. Y uh, uh, earlier, if you notice when you switch, and this is something I find so beautiful, is that when you asked her her first question, she had to switch from thinking in English to thinking in Spanish. and 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 we laugh, but that's pure genius, and that's part of the grandness of all of this. And it reminds me of working in a hotel, and a lot of people, because they don't interact with people of other cultures, don't see this. But I would see people from Asian countries and from Spanish speaking countries who at lunchtime would sit in front of the television at the break room and listen to CNN just so that they can get to hear the language and learn the words. It's so beautiful. And probably people who are listening in English did not hear Senora Hernandez's journey, but it's beautiful, and it's an example for everybody who comes to this country for a better opportunity. That no, it may not always be easy, but the opportunities are there, and you just have to take advantage of them. And she's a perfect example.
And I think one thing that would be great for those listeners who didn't understand her journey on her show, Our Bilingual Place, she does do her interviews in English and in Spanish. So they'll
Mhm.
start off in one language and then they'll say the same thing in the other language so that they are given access to both. And for today's episode, I asked her to be in Spanish specifically because I wanted to inspire more people, especially people who look like us, to learn Spanish because when we get scared when we don't know what's happening. And I want to break that fear of people being controlled by that fear of, I don't understand what's happening, so let me check out. So like what you're saying with people going to the break room to watch CNN and learn, I've heard about people doing stuff like that for
Mm-hmm.
young kids when they come from different countries, teaching them using Sesame Street and other kids shows like what we have now on YouTube. Like when I was a kid, we didn't have YouTube until like I got a little bit older, but having access to what is it, PBS Kids, they have so
Mm-hmm.
many shows, and now they're accepting the different cultures. Like Molly of Denali's in Alaska, but she uses her native language in part of it. So they're teaching kids at an earlier age that it's okay to be different. It's okay to speak another language, to look different. But what's most important is, can you be kind, and can you
Yes.
contribute to our greater community? And I believe that once we as a generation actually work together, and I love being a millennial for the fact that I'm in the middle of this transition that's happening between tradition and change. And
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be able to work with more millennials on the way we do this so that we change for the better, not change and go backwards, because throwing out everything that our ancestors worked for isn't going to help us in learning from their mistakes or learning from the hard lessons they had to learn that weren't necessarily mistakes, but they just had to learn it. So I just want to be able to be a part of something like that. So if you two know anything, please send me that information, because
Mhm.
this generation is too valuable for us to lose them. And I believe we're all on the same page with that. Mr. Norman, with your work on the council, you could be retired and chilling right now, but you're
True.
actually making an effort to make a difference. And I actually live in Snellville currently. So I think
Ah.
it's really awesome that you're doing something in my community. We're going to have a conversation because it's a lot of stuff that's happening. Number one, oh, I had a guest on my show last week or last month, and she discussed how she's tired of us having gas stations built in our area of Snellville, but we can't vote for the people in our area. We're unincorporated, but there are gas stations and other things, storage units being built. We want useful things. There's empty
Mm.
real estate, and I don't know how to get started with that. So we're gonna have a conversation off the
You
air.
know, that actually came up at a lady brought that up at a town hall meeting about 2 months ago.
Oh my
Exactly
gosh,
that. Exactly that.
it'll be
So we,
hilarious
we
if
might
we're
be
talking
talking
about the
about the
same
same
person.
person. Yes.
It'll be hilarious. I'm gonna ask her because I mean, I would say small world, but we all live in the same area. So
Yeah, truly.
but I do want to ask, what both of you already told me some of the biggest challenges you've already faced. And I think that it's amazing that you didn't let each one of those knock you down, because it's easy for some people to say, you know what, this didn't work. It didn't work the way I wanted it to work. So now I just give up on everything and let me just live a boring life. And they don't live up to their purpose. But the two of you, I had a guest, Andre Notice. It says your purpose is not for you. He was on my first season, but this book was a game changer because it helped me to realize, like, well, not help me specifically because I was already in that line of thinking, but it helped me to realize how many other people don't realize that living up to their purpose, or not living up to their purpose, is disrespectful to the gifts God gave them, but also disrespectful to the people in their communities, because you're quitting after a little bit of a resistance, but you overcoming that resistance is what might make the difference for the next generation. And I like how the both of you didn't allow where you started from to stop you from getting to where you are now. So I'm very proud of both of you. I
Wow.
do want to mention that all three of us are authors. If you don't know, I have a book as well. I'm available on Amazon also. I think all of our WCEG hosts who are authors, we need a list. And all three of us are bilingual authors. And I would like for us to have at least this and get our books out to both communities. Even if it's only available in one language, let's figure out how to do it on the other side. So my book is called The Audacious Mentality Needed to Get My, I use the S word, but I'll say my life together, because I use the language that my audience needs. So for that language, we need real talk, because they don't do this in school. They don't talk about your purpose in school. They don't talk about what you really need, and you have to go and figure that out on your own through life. And we don't get the opportunity to, how do you say this? We don't get the opportunity to pause life. It just keeps happening. It keeps going. And I want to be able to reach more people. So I did make it available as an ebook on Amazon, and I have an e-course that goes with it where I say I'm a pimp. I mean, I don't say it. I am a pimp. I'm a personal improvement and motivation partner. So I help people achieve their best next self. And if that means learning another language to open up more opportunities so you can do what you really want to do, but having access to, is it better to just get money from people who only speak your language or money from people who speak another language too? So I think
Right.
that opens up the idea of, wow, I do see the value of learning another language, but in learning another language, teaching them the value of respecting those people, just like you respect the people of your language, like teaching them that we all want the same things. We all want to eat good food, spend time with the people we love, and do what we love to do and get paid while we do it. So, like, I think since we all love the same things, and like you said, we all bleed red,
Mm-hmm.
I think that if we really focus on this next generation, it doesn't matter what administration is in the office if we can make a difference on this level. Because yes, they do affect how we live, but it's our day-to-day lives of how we treat each other's, like treat our neighbors, so how we want to be treated. So
Mm-hmm.
sorry, that was a very long rant,
No.
but I do like that you both have pride in who you are. But Mr. Norman, what aspects of Black culture from your youth do you feel are most important to preserve? And which
Well,
ones do you feel like we should move out of?
well, preserve, and I think I mentioned this earlier, is that our parents wanted so much for us. So it was a part of being, and Ramona's story is similar, is to focus on your future and don't be deterred. You know, the old saying is shoot for the stars, you may just hit the moon. You know, that may be as far as you go, but it's further than where you were. So, uh, you know, it is an old saying about people say in church, let God guide my steps. And sometimes those steps, when you do that, those steps lead you to uh, opportunities and journeys and travels that you never expected, but they all enhance you. So that part, I think is important. I think that some of the things that we need to let go of, I talk about this often, and even on my program, is that we have to let go of this self-hatred that that is that seems to be running rampant in our community, and I mean that by the way that we speak to one another, the way that we treat one another. Uh, I wrote something years ago about people to stop using the N word and the B word. Uh, those are dehumanizing words. And as long as we continue to dehumanize one another by terms that were never meant to be used toward from one human being to another, the violence, the hatred will continue. So those are the things that I am about. I'm steadfast in that, and I think that once we let go of those negative concepts that we use to separate people, separate cultures, I think we'll all be better off.
I I agree with you. There's this thing you made me think of. There are shows I stopped watching because of the amount of violence that is portrayed. And I don't want to see people who look like me get killed on TV. And I don't that's not entertaining to me. There was the show The Boys. I really loved the storyline. And then they went into a season where they had a lady and she had superpowers and she just went and she made a massacre of people who look like us. And I said no, I'm done, because it was a good, I really liked the storyline
Mhm.
until it got to that point. It was like you had no other ideas, you're not creative enough to come up with something that doesn't dehumanize my people. They're normalizing it to where it's like it's on the news so much that people, they're just like, it's just Thursday. And I don't
Yeah.
like, I really wish that we could move forward, but like we said, it requires us to change our minds, but that requires us to be active parents, or be, it requires us to be active in these young kids' lives, because they have access to more violence than we did. They have access to these video games, and I'm not blaming the video games, but if they're spending all day playing video games and they don't know the difference between what's fake and what's reality, then we get kids going to these schools and shooting up schools. And I'm
Yeah.
tired of this.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not the only one that's tired of this. So it's like, what do we do? Because the laws aren't going to help us. They've made it clear that they prioritize profits from gun sales and whatever. They make sure that that profit is more important than our children's safety. So a lot of homeschooling parents have been, or parents have started homeschooling, because I know for me, I'm not sending my kid to a school where I might have to see it on the news one day. No, I've worked in childcare, I've worked in schools, and that's terrifying, because it's like these parents send their kids to school so they could go to work to pay for these kids to have whatever they need, but then they're spending less time with them because they have to go to work, and because the cost of living is so high, and trying to keep up with everything is just, it's too much, it's overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to do something. And I don't know how we even get started, but I know there are some people who are starting and some people who are like, that's not as important. So I want to make sure that we work together and break these cultural barriers beyond language. Like, imagine if our kids and kids who speak Spanish just played together, like the dream that Martin Luther King had, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
So moving on, I'm sorry. That was a
No, it's time
very
to
long
stop. You're right. It's
tangent.
time to stop dreaming and wake up and do what we need to
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Exactly. And then now the word woke is used
Oh,
against
don't
us.
go there. Oh, do you
Uh-huh.
know? Do you know how much pushback I get on Facebook about how that word woke is the way that it's used now is so offensive to people of color? It's amazing, just
Wow.
absolutely amazing. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
So Ramona, we were talking about tradition. So, ¿qué tradiciones o valores de la cultura mexicana transmite a tu hija y a tu comunidad?
Los valores más grandes que yo transmito y que quisiera que se preservaran es el lenguaje. Y, no, y estar, la legacía que tú tienes, querer aprender de tu pasado. Para mí es muy importante hablarles a mis hijos sobre mis abuelos, sobre lo que mis abuelos me platicaban,
Wow.
cómo mis abuelos me enseñaban. Oh, sé muchos remedios naturales que mi abuela me enseñó, que mi
Oh,
mamá sigue diciéndome, cualquier cosa que yo pregunte a mi mamá, oh, ¿por qué no coces este té? Oh, esta fruta te ayuda. Todo eso lo transmito yo a mis hijos, ahora lo transmito a mi nieta. Am, Creo que eso es lo más valioso que tiene una persona como identidad. Es la identidad que te da de cómo eres tú, cómo te formas desde pequeño, cómo te enseñó tu mamá, qué escuchabas de tu papá, cuando te regañaban, qué te decían, por qué te decían eso. Y antes en nuestra generación No sé, Mr. Norman, pero creo que somos de la misma generación. Nuestros papás solo nos regañaban, pero no nos explicaban por qué nos regañaban o por qué nos aventaban el zapato. Y ahora lo que yo he hecho desde que soy mamá, siempre les aviento el zapato primero y les digo, te lo aventé porque no me gustó cómo hablaste, te lo aventé porque no está bien lo que hiciste. Y creo que eso hace una generación más fuerte y más segura de ellos mismos. Am, mi niñez fue dura porque mi papá no fue malo, simplemente no tuvo el apoyo de sus padres. La educación, digamos, el cariño de sus padres, podríamos decirlo así. Y él creció de una manera muy estricta y a nosotros nos creció muy estrictos. No nos dejaba hacer muchas cosas, no nos relacionábamos con muchas personas. Y eso a mí, en lo personal, y creo que en algunos de mis hermanos, fue causa de que fuéramos muy callados, muy cerrados, no expresábamos nuestras emociones, sentíamos algo y no lo decíamos. Y ahora que soy mamá con mis hijos, cambié todo eso. Cambié todo eso porque eh, no quiero y nunca quise que mis hijos fueran callados, que no me dijeran nada, que no me tuvieran confianza, que fueran inseguros, que no vivieran contentos completamente. Y gracias a Dios lo logré. Siento que ahora que son adultos, son seguros de ellos mismos, hacen lo que ellos quieren, no lo que otra gente les dice. Creo que saben decir no cuando es necesario decir no. Y eso se debe de preservar, preservar tu identidad, tu integridad, para que cuando seas adulto no te arrepientas de nada. Creo que yo viví una niñez oprimida a la mejor parte de mi juventud, pero empecé a vivir cuando tuve oportunidad de hablar, cuando tuve oportunidad de decir, no me gusta y no lo voy a hacer. Am, Creo que soy afortunada de de que ninguno de mis hijos haya perdido su lenguaje hasta ahora que son adultos, porque lamentablemente yo puedo ver en mi comunidad que llegando a los Estados Unidos, y no culpo a nadie porque es normal, es lógico que se pierdan nuestras costumbres, que se pierda nuestro lenguaje, pero porque mucha comunidad, la comunidad inmigrante pierde sus valores y pierde su lenguaje, porque tienen que empezar un cambio que no es deseado, no es deseado para ellos dejar su país, dejar sus costumbres, su familia. Y lamentablemente estoy viendo muchos nueva generación de niños migrantes perder su lenguaje o perder parte de su lenguaje por integrarse a una sociedad que es muy diferente a nuestros países, que es un lenguaje nuevo que tienes que aprender porque en todos lados vas a escuchar y hablar inglés. Y creo que para mí esas dos partes, añadiendo a lo que Mr. Norman dijo, creo que añadiendo a eso, es algo para mí muy importante que no se debe de perder.
Y lo que dices es la verdad, porque hay una generación con muchas que no pueden hablar en español y cuando llegan la gente suya a un restaurante o cualquier lugar donde trabaja, no puede comunicar, pero la persona, el cliente pensaba que, "Oh, yo puedo hablar en español, yo tengo más confianza en este momento, pero la persona dice que I don't speak Spanish y cuando dice algo como eso es como triste para la persona porque es una otra, ¿cómo se dice? Barrier, desafío.
Otra barrera, otra barrera.
Otra barrera porque tiene que examinar y cruzar. En este momento yo entiendo porque yo puedo hablar con mi familia por una manera, pero no puedo hablar por el mundo de negocios con la misma actitud y conversación. Decimos code switching for my community. But I wanted to ask you guys, before we close out today, this show, it went kind of fast because it was a really good conversation.
Wow.
But what really showed me the value of this conversation the most is how much we are similar, how how for the two of you, how you both grown up with similar kind of being raised with education being put first. And a lot of times education isn't put first anymore.
Mhm.
Education is just taken advantage of, whereas in other places it's not a right, it's a privilege. And here it's a right because of access. So going into questioning whether or not the Department of Education will be defunded it will change our country drastically. And that's why parents have to step up now and be an active part of their kids' education. And I like that the two of you are actively involved. So, Mr. Norman, just in brevity, I'm sorry, when you look back at your life, what is something that you are the most proud of? And then, Ramona, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you as well. ¿Hay una historia o mensaje que te gustaría compartir con nuestra audiencia? So I'm gonna go with Mr. Norman first and then Ramona.
Uh, the one thing that I think I'm most proud of is that because, not that I'm a perfect man, and I'm not, but I held on to certain ideals, and I think that those ideals, I know that they changed lives. I've changed policies in the police department, not only in Philadelphia, but in Atlanta, in Houston, and in other large cities. And in so doing, I indirectly affected the lives of people that I will never ever know. So that's one thing I could be proud of.
That's amazing. Y Ramona,
Yo me siento orgullosa y nunca me gusta hablar mucho o decir mis cosas, pero me siento muy orgullosa de la vida que he tenido, me siento orgullosa porque he cambiado el futuro de mis hijos y eso ha sido muy difícil, pero ha sido porque me he atrevido a hacer cosas que me daban pena, cosas que fueron muy difíciles y que tuve que aguantar, pero cambié el futuro de mis hijos y así como yo lo cambié, le doy ánimo a toda mi comunidad migrante a cambiarlo. A veces no es tan cómodo ni tan bonito, pero solo pensar que vas a cambiar el futuro de tus hijos, de tu familia y la tuya misma, vale la pena.
yes, it was. Okay, so I was asked to translate your closing remarks. Would you like
Oh,
me to do it, or would you like to do it?
I can do it. So something that I feel so proud of me is my life, but more than that is that I changed the future for my children. I dare to do so many things that I didn't like it. I I um I had a lot of struggles, but I always have in my mind to change the future for my children. My life, like Mr. Norman and everybody, it was very hard growing up and learning so many things. But just thinking in the future for the children, for my children, it worked. It worked. I can say I'm not regret of anything. I'm very thankful with so many people that open my doors, so many people that trust on me, and so many people that see something on me, because that counts so many, so many. Thank you for that to everybody.
And I am thankful for both of you being on the show. This was an amazing episode. Just to recap, I want to let you know that Mr. Norman Carter Jr. is the host of Issues and Answers right here on the WCEG Network. And Ms. Ramona Hernandez is the host of Our Bilingual Place on the WCEG Network as well. And I am Ines as the host of Millennial Talk 2.0, Multilingual Intergenerational Conversations, MIC for short. and we are available on your Roku. So don't forget to just tune in and let it play. We're not the only host. There are so many hosts with different backgrounds. There's bound to be someone that you resonate with. And go ahead and let us know in the comments if there was something similar in their stories that you feel like you resonate with, so that we can connect with you. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments on the YouTube, on our social media platforms, or wherever you may find us. But I hope you have a lovely day, and I hope you decide to make a difference today. Thank you.
Thank
Gracias.
you.
Thank you.
Bendiciones.
Gracias, Mr. Norman. Inés, gracias.
Yes, yes.